Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, October 4th. Themes of the day. Well, we finally got the bond bounce that came at some pretty significant levels in terms of using volume at price. The Qs led for the day. Nice strength there. The Virgin point of controls that I've been talking about extensively yesterday. I probably mentioned them over 10 times yesterday as hey, something looks like it was changing, and we finally have a level to trade against. So I will go over that in just a second. Breadth was better today, but still, wasn't something to kind of do backflips or cartwheels about. So I think what I said earlier about the market breadth is it's a little bit of baby steps. Today at least was a step in the right direction, and so we didn't, and today was kind of sketchy in terms of it kind of just felt like the price action was a bit whippy. So I will get into all of that. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not providing any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. So let me talk about a couple of those themes of the day, and then we will look at some single name charts towards the end of this video. So let's just rehash a couple things that I said yesterday that really, this is exactly why I use volume at price and the MarketWebs indicator. Remember, with the system that I'm using, right? I know a lot of people also look at volume at price, which is good, right? That more people are looking at volume at price, and they're doing things like anchoring VWAPs. What the advantage of the system that I use is you don't have to get involved at all in anchoring any VWAP to last week's highs or last week's lows, or the year-to-date VWAP or the month VWAP. All of it is set for you, right? And it's basically the trick is not a trick, but the use of it is you can use it on multiple time frames, and those situations will come up. So, for example, on the daily chart, right, you get a value area for the month. You get a new value area for the month, right? But the Virgin point of controls do not change, right? They are based on where there's been high volume, really a large amount of volume that price has never come back and tested, right? And so when we get out of a range, right, they become magnets, because price is searching for an area where a lot of buyers and sellers previously met up, and it's looking to retest that area. And what you're looking for is a lot of times, once you get to that retest, you're watching for a bounce, right? Similar to what we see. And sometimes you can have on a time frame like daily, and then we're going to talk about the weekly chart in just a second, but you can have a series of these, right, where and this is basically the way why this occurred, why there's so many of these things lumped together, is because price was really moving quickly back in here, right? It was moving fast, and it didn't cover, it just kept on rising. So you can see how there's no overlap between this value area and this point of control. That creates a Virgin point of control. Here, back in here, price didn't even cross the point of control, right? Which again was where all the volume was in the previous period. So it becomes very significant, right? And again, price, when you're trading, when you are in price discovery, to the downside or to the upside, price is looking for where there was a lot of volume. And you can have, again, nothing is guaranteed, and you need to basically pay attention to when you come upon one of those levels. But you can often see, a bounce and a reversal, right? And this is what we talked about in yesterday's video extensively. That's back in here. Here was the Virgin point of control, right? And we hit this, we tagged it, and then we began to reverse, and we held that for about a year, right? That was taken out last October, and we held that level for a year. So again, like, there's no assurances that there's going to be an ultimate reversal, right? You still have to be disciplined in your trading, but you want to know where there's something significant where things could possibly change. And right now we've taken out this Virgin point of control, and we're trying to bounce. We'll know more. This is a weekly candle. We'll know more next week, if we get our green candle after this. And if that happens, why is this so important? Because right now, what's been going on in bond yields has been a major headwind for equities, especially when they move fast, right? That's the main thing, is when they move fast, you're going to see some effects happen in the equity market, which we've seen. You've seen what's happened to interest rate sensitive areas of the market, like utilities, right, and consumer staples, right, and name companies with big debt, right. We've seen a lot of charts look like waterfall down. So anyway, here's TLT, right, and this also took out a VPOC. So for now, we've got a bounce, and we need more time to see if it's a reversal. All right. What about S&P futures, which we talked about yesterday? And again, I don't usually, if you're a regular viewer of my videos, I don't make that many predictions, but I do get very serious and focused when we take out one of these levels. And I was saying this all day in the trading room yesterday. I'm like, we didn't take this out at the end of the day. When did we take this out? In the overnight market. Right. So we got down to this level that I was talking about, and we bounced. So, again, I would be looking for more follow through in the coming days. But this was so far great signal, both on bonds. And again, it kind of goes hand in hand. It was nice to see that there was some levels that were taken out on the bonds and then there was another one also in S&P futures, right? So I think that's important. So I mentioned that the price action was a little bit whippy today. So for example, like looking at the 5-minute, right? This was not easy today. This wasn't like a straightforward trending day, but one of the things that I've showed in these videos, and I think it was yesterday, I was talking about how last October, right, as a comparison, number one, we never got the capitulation day last October when things reversed, right? Everybody was waiting for that. They were waiting for the VIX to get to like a 40, right? It never got there, right? It did its own thing, and it managed to turn after this version point of control was taken out. But I talked about after this excellent day where you may have said, wow, that was really great, right? The following day, you got no follow through, right? So you had to be patient. So that's what I was kind of thinking today with today's price action, because I'll go back to this 5-minute here on the S&P, right? It kind of gave you some doubts a couple times during the day, right? Especially after the open, we started to sell off. Now we held the bottom of value, but then we made a nice move till about 12:30, and then we really started to give back those gains, right? And then buyers kind of ran with it a little bit, but again, that it wasn't exactly and if you thought it was an easy day, congratulations to you, but I thought it was kind of whippy. And just like we've been seeing over the last couple months, you can't chase any of these moves. Like even a break out of the value area, you weren't really rewarded for that, right? So so you really have to kind of scale into positions, right? And be trading versus support, rather than trading the breakout. You can do, but you can't do it like we're in a bull market. You can't do it with decent size, because you're just not getting a lot of follow through on the majority of the times that happens. All right, so that's the S&P, right? And before I leave the S&P, the one thing, just to come up with a conclusion here in this chart, there's more work to do, right? We've got to get back over that 200-day moving average. And as I've said back in here, we've got to at least get above the 5-period moving average to change the short-term trend. So that's what I would want to see in terms of confirmation for the S&P. Let's talk about the Qs for a minute, because obviously they've been showing some relative strength, right? Briefly, on this candle, we took out the August lows, but we got right back above it. Interesting where we closed. I'm going to come back to that chart in just a second. So I like when you've got easy levels to watch here. So number one, unlike the S&P and unlike small caps, just lower my volume here on this. Unlike the S&P and unlike the small caps, the Qs actually held last week's lows, right? So again, we call that some relative strength. Are we out of the woods here in the Qs? No, I would say, so this was, again, a real nice day that we had on our hands, but we've got to get above 359.93. That's the top of value for the month. Notice how we closed right around that top of value. So it just tells you that the market is not ready yet. And going back to what we experienced last October, it may take some time, right? Last October was not straight up. There was back and forth, right? And then we climbed. So I would be very patient with this market. I would not go crazy thinking, oh my God, like the bottom is in and I've got FOMO and I got to start buying. And then also notice how that resistance level lines up on the daily chart too. So that's what I'm looking for confirmation, is for price to get into the value area for the month of October, right? That would be a good starting point for confirmation for the Qs, because Qs did not take out a virgin point of control, but again, they're showing relative strength, nor did they need to at this point. Right, and I am long the Qs. Right, here's just bring this up if I can. Right, I actually went right on the open. I went into some Qs. I just thought, hey, I use obviously that signal in the S&P futures that we talked about with the virgin point of control. I want to get established with putting some risk on. So I did that right after the open today, and I took several targets in the Qs position just to make sure I was locking in some profits. And I left, notice I took 3 targets. Like normally I would never do that in something that trades $356 and taking a target at 359. Like that would normally be my first target. But that's not the market that we're in right now. So you've got to be locking in profits, in every move right now with this market, in my opinion. And then I did add some back, right? So that's why I'm aggressively taking targets. Number one, to lock in profits, and then just to make sure that I have some flexibility, right? So that I can be nimble. And then when the market does come in a little bit, then I can start to kind of buy the dip a bit. Right, that is worked. Of the things that have worked well for me the last couple of months, it's giving myself that flexibility to be able to add. All right, so that's that. I'll go over IWM really quickly because that is the one that's been showing all kinds of relative weakness, but you did get a hammer bar. This was down at one point, another 1.1% on the day. Just amazing. So could this rebound? Could this bounce? Of course, anything could bounce, right? Utilities, right? They bounced, right? They were down again. Like they're really not too much follow through from here, right? I don't like particularly, like if you're involved in names that have had a waterfall sell off like this, great for a bounce, but I don't know if you really want to play with any more than just trying to get that one day bounce off of something. Because again, anything could be, an oversold bounce. When something gets really oversold, it is due for a bounce, but the trend is down. Right. And, there's a reason for why utilities have gone down this much. You don't need to own utilities when you could get when you can get a better treasury, better yield in the treasury market. So this is justified to me. Could it rebound more? Of course. But that's, it's really you're playing with fire. Like, where's it going to rebound up to? Another buck? And then what? And then it continues to go down? Like, that's a very difficult trade versus something that is trending up and you can continue to kind of add on dips as long as the trend is in place. But trying to look for a reversal on something like this is, I don't know, playing with fire, in my opinion. So let's get to did I cover the points that I wanted to? Breadth, I wanted to just mention that as well. It was not a super strong breadth day, but it's a step in the right direction. If we look at the S&P, right, in 4-week new highs versus 4-week new lows, we had two names that had 4-week new highs today, which I don't know, maybe this hasn't been updated because I find this hard to believe, but I guess it might be, it is what it is. And look at all the 175 names that made new 4-week lows. So I don't know, let's take a look at one of these names here. Let's look at KeyBank. Maybe that made, it probably did. It did make a new 4-week, 1 month new low. So, again, breadth, I didn't see what the advancers versus decliners were, but you could see, right, on the bottom of our screen, you could see that this was positive, just not super, super positive. I want to go through some single name charts. Tesla stood out to me. You know, I put together this this momentum scanner here for just the Magnificent Seven, as they refer to them, and you can see Tesla was a standout here. We have our trigger on the 5-minute value area, and a real nice move by Tesla, right? Getting out of this consolidation. And I have to say, you know, from where Tesla was in the beginning of the week, remember it reported deliveries that missed earlier in the week, and it came down. Congratulations. I know some people played this, like they held their nose and bought here on that 1 hour bar that went all the way down to 239. Congrats if you managed to do that and it paid off for you. But it never broke on that morning move of deliveries on Monday morning. Went all the way down, right down to the bottom of value, and held quite nicely. Right, again, what is this value area, by the way? It's based on all of last week's volume at price activity, and roughly one standard deviation of that data, right? And that's why it becomes so statistically significant. So Tesla may not be done here, because you could see we've got one of these version point of controls 266. So that would be a short-term price target that I would be looking at. And also notice how that lines up with the top of value for the month, which is 265.82. So if you're looking for a short-term area to trim, just a few bucks away, $4 or $5 away, and then you can kind of watch from there. Next one I would watch, which I think is kind of tricky because you've got a lot of overhead supply in here, but AMD made a nice move today. This was up 4% and really kind of made a late day charge in this, and this did get over its value area for the week. Next area to watch is this 105.20 level, which is just about $1 away, and then you can kind of see if it can move from there. But this did hold the 200-day moving average and is starting to build a little bit. AMD, I don't show a lot, or I don't talk a lot about, because it's been a really big underperformer in the semi space, right? It has not performed well, but I get it. A lot of people, a lot of FinTwit has eyes on this stock for whatever reason. All right, one name that I'm watching is Meta. Meta has held up pretty well, I think, over through the volatility over the last couple of weeks, right? And I would watch for 306.30. This is very close to breaking out, so this is a must watch for me, because the price action. Look at all the moving averages are the 50, the 20, and the what do I have on here? 50, 20, and the 5 are the moving averages, short-term moving averages that I use. Notice how they're all wrapped around one another. They're coiled, which can mean that there's a big move that's coming. I would definitely be watching for a break above 306.30. Just to go through, again, some of these bigger names, which I think is where the strength is. Google, I talked about on Twitter really briefly that, a lot of names look like they could be a bear flag, right? For instance, and some of them were, right? You look at like a name like Elf, for example, right? Elf had a big move down, consolidated, try to break higher, but this is a bear flag, right? And it resolved lower. So not every name, just because it looks like it's a pattern, is going to do that. Celsius had another one, right? Celsius, which I was long a little piece of and had to take off for a loss. But this also had, right, big move down, bear flag, and then resolved lower. Google, you could have not exactly the same pattern because it didn't sell off that much, but at one point it looked like, hey, what's going to happen here? And it ended up it's resolving higher. So, again, I like Google. The reason why I focus in that FANG group a lot on Google and Meta is because their earnings were outstanding. I always will go to the names that had really good earnings. And I think out of the FANG group, those two names had the best earnings. All right, a couple other names that I was looking at, which I think I've written down someplace. Costco, which reported sales after their monthly sales numbers. This thing held in pretty well. I was able to take a target in this yesterday, right around 574, and It then sold off. I didn't add to it or anything, just because the market was I just didn't want to be adding to a lot of positions yesterday. But it is holding in there. Again, it's a little bit of a slower mover, but I think looks okay, right? Another name that's not too bad, and this is more of a it's a play on language and so forth. So I wouldn't take a big position in this thing, but I would watch for a break over 163.78. It's showing some relative strength. Sphere, everybody saw the U2 the videos from the U2 concert. This thing, we talked about how this got, speaking of coiled, was coiled up into the weekend, had this big bounce, consolidated yesterday and put in a nice bar here. I'm looking for continuation, and I started a position in this one. Another one that showed really nice relative strength about a week ago was CAMT. Notice it's just been pulling back here lightly and back into the top of value for October. So you can go long for this thing as long as you have a disciplined stop of either 60-12, or if you want to use the 20-day moving average, you can do that as well. All right, guys, I'm going to end the video there. Again, what I say almost at the end of every one of my videos is one day is not a trend. However, I think this was definitely a step in the right direction. Was everything perfect today? No, it wasn't. But, I think little by little is what you want to see from this market going forward. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.